Welcome to Changing the Channel with Joe Garner, a show about shifting our individual and collective beliefs on what is possible for the future of humanity. As our understanding of how our reality continues to shift, we are at a point of reunification between science and spirituality. What does the world look like when we break free from the generational trauma that has kept most humans playing small for thousands of years and step into our full power as the co-creators of this reality? I always ask that you keep an open mind with this podcast. Ask yourself what resonates with my truth at this time and what does not. Respect your intuition, but see if you can get through the whole show because there might be that little nugget buried deep in the conversation that unlocks something for you. Welcome back to Changing the Channel. I am joined today by Ken Gronbach. He is a demographer. Ken studies populations and forecasts change. Ken follows ethnic populations as they are born, age, migrate, and die. So welcome to the show, Ken. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Give us a little bit of background on your journey into demography, into, the demographic realm.
My wife and I had an advertising agency in Connecticut, and we had American Honda motorcycles as a client, a huge client. It was 140 dealers, and we printed money with this client. In 1987, is a critical year. All of a sudden, the bikes didn't sell. I got a call from American Honda in California, and they said, "Did you run the ads?" Well, you don't want that call. We had dealers from the tip of Maine to Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C., and it was like somebody turned the faucet off. And for 4 or 5 years, we tried everything until 1991. We came up with different products. We promoted products. We lowered the price on our best-selling motorcycles. Nothing worked. The dealers closed. Now think about that. So fast forward to 1996. I'm sitting in my office in Connecticut, and I'm reading a full-page editorial regarding Generation X. Now, Generation X was born 1965 to 1984. And it was saying Generation X was not participating in the political process. It was October of the year. It was Clinton versus Dole. And the politics were really heating up. And it's saying that Generation X was not voting, was not running for office, was not giving up their time or money to the political process. And what was our future going to be if Generation X was the future? And I had 40 people working for me. 30 of them were Gen Xers. I didn't have any lazy people. So I called in our research department. I said, go find out everything you can about Generation X. Census data, CIA fact book, Bureau of Labor Statistics, anything you can find. And they came back a few days later and said, Generation X will never perform at the level of the boomers. And I said, so they're lazy. And he said, no, there's fewer of them. And I stopped for a moment. I said, what? I said, 20-year generation compared to a 20-year generation. You're telling me there's fewer Generation Xers than there are baby boomers? And he said, yeah. I said, how many fewer? He said, 9 million. And I said, what's the percentage? He said, about 11 or 12%. All of our dealers were on 5% after-tax profit. They were franchises. 11% free fall on the size of their market. 1, totally unanticipated. And 2, devastating. Put them out of business. And I said, I can't believe it. I said, we're having this conversation with my researchers, and they're saying, so you're telling me we have a hole in our population, a big hole? I mean, it's like a big bell-shaped curve of baby boomers, and then we have an inverted bell-shaped curve of Generation X. And he said, exactly. I said, does anybody know this? And he said, no, I don't think so. It's just the way it is. It's just, they weren't born. And they weren't born because they had a very few number of parents. Their parents were born 1925 to 1944. They were called silents. But I said, we just figured out what happened to Honda motorcycles. I said, we knew we sold Honda motorcycles to men 16 to 24. That was it. 16, 24. Very, very narrow demo. I said, once the baby boomers exited that very narrow demo, the bikes didn't sell. So I said, we've made an amazing discovery here. We went back and looked at Generation X as they were born. They closed maternity wards. They shut down toys. They shut down 30% of the public schools. They almost shut down Detroit. And in 2008, they shut down housing. So I said, this is awesome. This is so, so I left the marketing business and I started writing books and doing research and speaking, which is what I do now on a full-time basis. And basically it's this, and I can sum it up in a simple analogy. You have a hot dog stand, and your hot dog stand, you've decided to go to a state fair, big state fair. But you're getting nervous because you don't have much business and you don't know whether to cut payroll, send some people home, or maybe if there is a lot of business, buy more hot dogs. So who do you call? You call me. You don't call your accountant. You don't call an attorney. You want advice. So you ask me a question, and the question is, Ken, should I send people home, cut payroll, or should I buy more hot dogs? I'm not doing very well. And I said, from where you are, can you see the parking lot? Yes. Describe it to me. It's filling up with school buses. And they scream at you, buy more hot dogs. That's all it is. That's all this is. Now it goes on from there in a myriad directions, but it is incredibly powerful and accurate. How's that?
And I'm sure you can definitely delve deep into the demographics and break things out and have, a really either very large or very small subsets of information that you're looking at. But the overall picture, and it seems like you're looking at really the macro level for a lot of this stuff.
Macro, long-term math. That's it. It is big picture, 30,000 feet. If you get into DNA, you lose it.
Right. That sounds fascinating. It's sparking my interest for sure. Finally, a place for listeners to gather and share. Join the Ascension Update Substack for messages and updates from our brothers and sisters helping with the Ascension, articles on the future of humanity, and a Q&A where you can ask my guides anything you would like. This is the hub for everything Ascension related. Click the link in the show notes or go to joegarner.substack.com to stay at the leading edge of this movement. And now, back to the show. So let's get into just a little bit of the macro trends that we're looking at. Let's start with the U.S. Like, what do you see as far as the macro trends for the U.S. Now that we have millennials and we've got the Gen Zers that are coming through? Like, what does the demographics look like for the U.S.?
Your generation, millennials, Generation Y millennials, are born 85 to 2004. The Generation Z is born 2005 to 24. When Generation Z and Generation Y are both complete, there'll be 170 million. It is a monster number. In fact, your generation is about 80 million plus. It's actually about 88 million when you count immigration. So we have consumers, we have labor, we have our country is in great shape. One of the best things that's ever happened to us is Latinos. The Latinos that have come from primarily from Mexico came into the country as a result of Generation X having not enough labor to satisfy the very wealthy boomers, and so they can make stuff for them. So with our immigration policy, the number of babies that we're having is not incredible, but it's slightly under 2. Replacement level fertility is 2.1, 2.2 babies per couple. And we're at about 1.6, 1.7 right now. But our numbers are pretty good because of Latinos. In fact, in 2007, we broke a record with 4,316,000 babies. The record was set prior to that in 1957 was 4,300,000.
Wow.
25% of the babies that were born in 2007 were Latino. And they're about 18, 19% of our population. We need immigrants. We're a nation of immigrants. Absolutely. So that's that part of it.
That's the U.S. Yeah.
That's the U.S. Well, let me tell you real quick. The number of people born. What is demographics? Demographics is live births, deaths, immigration, and aging. Live births, deaths. There are about 150 million people born each year now in the world. And about half of them are unintended because it's fun making them. And I'm not trying to be funny.
Right.
It's fun making them so they're unintentional. So we
You
have
said half of them are unintended?
unintentional. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's good news and bad news. The number of babies being born in the world, uh, the rate has dropped 50% in 50 years. 50% in 50 years. And it continues to drop worldwide. 75% of the countries in the world are below replacement level fertility and don't do immigration because they're xenophobic. They don't like people that don't look like them. And it's very hard for them to bring in immigrants. So uh, once you understand that, and there's about 60 million deaths per year in the world and 60 million abortions per year in the world. Okay. Understanding that, um, the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central and South America are in good shape demographically. The place that is very, very bad off right now and will soon cease to be a country is Japan.
Hmm.
Yeah, Japan literally hasn't had kids for like 40, 50 years. They're way, way below. So now they have no labor. So all of the stuff that used to be made in Japan when I was young is now made in China. China had a one child only policy that they uh, put into place about 45 years ago. And it essentially prevented about a half billion people, 500 million. So what does that mean? That means China right now is cooked as well. China
Right.
will cease to be the world's manufacturer. And it is the world's manufacturer right now, but it can't do it without people. And they don't do immigration. So is it that way all over Asia? Yeah, it is. Is it that way in India? No, not quite. Indians are having babies, but Indians have other issues in that they can't distribute wealth. They have rich people and poor people, and that's just the way they do things. And so I don't think their GDP is ever going to, our GDP, our gross domestic product right now in the United States is over 20 million, 20
Trillion.
trillion.
Yeah.
And in India, I think it's like 3. So what's going to happen to the EU? No
Yeah.
labor. No babies, no labor. No babies, no labor. And
Even with all the immigration that they just had?
no, it's they desperately need it, but they're not ready for it. And I think probably the country that's handled it the best has been Germany. Uh, but overall, no. What's happening? They bring in immigrants from North Africa. North African immigrants are Muslim. France, for instance, France is having like one child per couple. So they bring in their labor. They bring it in from North Africa. They're Muslims. The Muslims have 6 kids. The indigenous people have 1. The 2 cultures never marry. Never. They just don't marry. So consequence, EU is history. And so is Eastern Europe. And so is Russia. I mean, Russia's in real bad shape. In fact, Russia is having a brain drain right now. They've lost about 1 million men, young men, because they didn't want to fight in the Ukraine war. So a lot of things going on. What will happen? The United States is, and it's happening as we speak. It's called onshoring. What is onshoring? Onshoring is manufacturing is coming to us. It's leaving China, coming to us. We have plenty of labor. The country that's going to really do best in the Americas is going to be Mexico very shortly. And it's a good thing too, because as they prosper, the cartels it will be in reverse. Actually,
Right.
and once a country prospers, then they'll do away with their crime. We did that with the mafia. But it's an exciting time to be alive. And one of the things that you're not going to see is globalization. Globalization is just not going to, it will reverse because it is going to be the future of the earth. And I hate to say it like this, but the future of the earth is going to be the Americas. And it's because the Americans are still having kids, primarily the immigrants that we're getting from Mexico, Central and South America are Catholic. The Catholic religion and our culture bond wonderfully. We're in good shape. We're in very, very good shape.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that America is in good shape. Now, One question that comes to mind while you're talking is, especially talking about labor, what do you have any variables with technology as technology becomes more ubiquitous, as the necessity for humans to do work starts to fade even more, especially as AI, for instance, starts to take over even more jobs? I mean, D does the amount of population and the human workforce fully tell that whole tale of prosperity in this kinda new world of technology?
AI will be a benefit if we can simply harness it and not turn it into something dumb or not
Right.
to, you know, uh, can AI improve our ability to manufacture? Of course it can. Just like the internet did, just like, uh, industrialization did, mass production. We're going to be fine. And I don't foresee a problem with the integration of technology. What I do see as a problem is the people having fewer and fewer and fewer kids. Overall, a country like the United States is pretty much like a business. If you if you gut it, if you take out a certain part of the population, and that's what happens when you take out babies, because babies don't stay babies. I was a baby, you were a baby, we were all babies. What happens when you don't have them? Well, you can't be an economy. You can't. Labor will be a major issue. Do I think AI is going to substitute babies? No, but I'll tell you something that is substituting our making of babies, and that's the internet. The internet, what we've done, because making babies is fun, is we've taken that fun and given it to a computer, and computers don't have babies. The problem with addiction to pornography on the internet is overwhelming worldwide. And it's taking its toll to the point where our population in the world is probably going to go to about 10 billion, and it will go there in like 2050, and then it will begin to shrink. Once it begins to shrink, we're cooked
And why do you think the shrinking population is gonna be an issue? I'm just kinda curious.
because it doesn't shrink uniformly. You don't have a spectrum of age. Will be a world of old people. What happened to Japan? In Japan, pornography, and I don't really, I'm sorry to be on
No,
that
you're
subject.
fine.
Yeah, okay. J- Pornography has been legal in Japan for about 70 years. Right now, you go to Japan, Japan has about 60 million housing units for their population of about 120 million. They have 10 million empty housing units because there are no people to occupy them. So they have no economy. When you have when you've displaced your young people and only have elderly people with no family, you can't have an economy. It doesn't work. So that will be a serious problem for us. No, it's not like, I listen, I speak about 50 times a year, and I actually will ask my audiences, I'll say, how many people here think the world is overpopulated? Too many people. And I get a lot of hands. And I say, it's just the opposite. We, we, we don't have nearly enough people, and we need more. So I'm encouraging you to tell your kids to have babies, because without them, we don't have future labor. We don't have future. There is this thing, Joe, a very important consideration called dependency ratio. What is it? You have a spectrum of people, 0 to 100 years old. Okay. Do Are the young people, do they provide for themselves? No, they're dependent. Do the elderly provide for themselves? No, they're dependent. You have to have people in the middle. If you don't have people in the middle, you don't have anything. That's what I'm afraid of.
Hmm. That's an interesting perspective. I haven't really looked at it as far as you said it was the dependency ratio.
Dependency ratio. Well,
Yeah.
you have to have people producing. Now, who's producing in our country now? Well, thank God we have Latino immigrants, because they are. In fact, Florida couldn't function at all without Latino immigrants. And I'm in a condo right now, and I moved to Florida a few years ago, full time, and without the Latinos and the Mexican Latinos that are here, and the Cuban Latinos, we'd be cooked because they work.
Right. And that's assuming, I think that's based on an assumption that the economy is going to stay the same basic framework. Now, from my perspective, the economy seems to be shifting. The economy is shifting away from production, away from, and this is kind of my understanding, but feel free to correct me. But we're shifting away from what I would call production economy and going into a little bit more of a services economy. So again, helping other humans, helping people understand where they're at. Again, services also include the financial services,
It's
insurance.
services are counted in GDP. So yeah,
Right.
what's going to happen? Consider the manufacturing that's being done in April right now. Consider the manufacturing that's being done in China right now. And, Southeast Asia, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. It can't be sustained. Where's it going to go? It's not going to go to Europe. It's not going to go to Eastern Europe. It's not going to go to Australia. Maybe, I don't know. It's coming here. It's coming to the United States. It's coming to Canada, United States, Mexico, Central and South America. We are going to produce here. And the first place we're seeing, I speak to real estate organizations and advise them. You know what's selling now like crazy? It is industrial land. Industrial land where they can build factories because it's all coming back.
Yeah, I'm in Austin right now, and I would say there are two things that are being built right now: large units of condominiums and apartments, and massive, I mean, million square foot warehouses. And those are the two things that everywhere in this city are being built. Everywhere that there's open land, and it's incredible to see.
Same thing down here. And it's your generation that's driving this. Multi-family housing is going to be big for the next 10, 15 years. And it's because your generation has a singular issue, and that is you're in debt.
Mhm.
Yeah. And we have to fix that. And I wish Biden was able to do that by forgiving the student loans. But your housing in general, there aren't enough houses for you to live in, which is why we're building multifamily. And we are short in the millions of houses. Housing is the economy is housing. We're fine. We're in very good shape.
Yeah, everywhere is building. I mean,
Yep.
it's incredible. And yeah, I think my generation, and especially Gen Zers, they're not really interested in having a house and plot of land and a yard to take care of or anything like that. Like
Right. You
we
will.
have exactly what we need at this moment. And as I would see as baby boomers continue to move on to the next realm, there will be houses opening up. There will be houses available as those Gen Zers and millennials start to want to have that, if that is in their path.
They will. Because what we tend to do, we tend to like to live in cities. And, I like that too. But once you have children, you don't. This thing, I don't know, it calls to you. Land calls to you. Bigger house calls to you. But
Gotcha.
you have to have an income, and
Yeah.
you have to make a lot of money.
And that's the tricky part, is that houses right now, I mean, it's not even close. If you
No, you're right.
are, even if you're making 60 or $70,000 a year, which used to be a pretty good uh, income, like you're living paycheck to paycheck. If you're lucky, you're able to afford the rent in a multifamily, multi-unit, type of setup. And now, again, this is something that really needs to be addressed, is what happens next when housing continues to go up, because obviously it's a safe harbor for anyone that has cash on hand. It's a safe bet through inflation to buy a house.
Correct.
Gold maybe Bitcoin if you believe in that. But as that continues to go up and up and up, I mean, what's going to happen with the Gen Zers, with millennials?
What's going to happen is they're finally going to get welcomed into the workforces, and they're going to make money, and they will be able to provide houses for their families, just like the baby boomers did, just like Generation X did, your generation. We're going to be fine. You know what your generation did, which changed things a little bit, is you took adolescence from 20 years old to 30 years old, and you lived longer with your parents.
Mhm.
And
Not by choice, usually.
no, not by choice, but it did screw things up. But that will reverse. And how do I know that? Well, a couple of things are going to happen. I grew up with hippies. You remember hippies?
Hmm.
Okay. Maybe your parents were hippies. I don't know. I grew up with hippies. What happened to sex, drugs, and rock and roll? What happened? I can remember my stepfather saying to me, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You're going to run the world with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. How are you going to do that? And I said, I don't know. I really don't. Hippies grew up. Hippies grew up, got jobs, had families, and became Republicans. So whatever problem that we're having with your generation or Generation Z that follows you is going to be fine because you're going to grow up. I hope I'm not insulting you, but you do. You get older and things happen. You amass wealth. Incidentally, you know how much money the baby boomers have? They have like over $100 trillion.
Right.
If the baby boomers could buy a nuclear submarine, they'd be the second most powerful nation in the world.
Hmm.
Just so what are they doing? They're coming down here. They're coming to Florida, and they're buying those homes in Naples.
Right. And that's what, is definitely coming, is this massive shift in wealth from baby boomer to, the Gen X's, and then from the Gen X's to the next generation. And that hopefully continues as long as the government is able to continue to sustain, and we're able to, keep this country together and stay a sovereign nation and not a group of completely divided individuals that, are calling this our home. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and again, a large part of this show is about how things are shifting from away from how they've been for the last 150, 200 years, and moving into a little bit more of a harmonious, instead of us always competing against each other, instead of us always, us versus China, us versus Japan, us versus Russia, Europe versus Russia, all of these ideas. It does, from my perspective, it does feel like all the tensions, these wars that are happening are the stepping stones to us reconnecting as a humanity and coming in. And I know that kind of flies in the face of what you're kind of talking about, but
That's right.
I think that's a future that is worth working towards. And does it necessarily matter whether or not which geographic land has the most capabilities of production? Is it going to use those production capabilities to benefit the entirety of the world, or is it going to use those production facilities to benefit only the people that either work or live in that country, general geographic area? Again, we're talking about, you've got the Canada, US, Mexico forming this kind of like loose trade agreement that we kind of stick to, kind of don't when it's convenient for the US to. But again, like, this globalization, this idea that we're starting to expand more and more and more, and that the borders are necessarily going to be of less importance in the coming years. I think that is something to really start to delve into and think about.
Well, that will unfold to a large degree by the politics of the United States and the Americas in general. But let me just say this. What we have right now is we have a monster group of young people, and that's you and Gen Z. They're not fully born yet, not until next year. Then you have a deficit in the population called Generation X, and they're augmented by about 64 million Latinos. The Latinos are not a political force yet. They won't be for a generation. That's just how it works. The Generation X is too small to buffer the extreme right wing baby boomers, this huge group, because as you age, you tend to be conservative.
Mhm.
Winston Churchill said, he said, if you're under 30 and you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart. And if you're over 30 and you're not a conservative, you don't have a brain.
Right.
So what's going to happen is we are gaining a liberal, a voting liberal every 8 seconds, and we're losing a conservative every 4 seconds because they're dying. So we are going to be, United States is going to be a liberal or progressive nation really till further notice, probably another 10 or 15 years. So, and all of the policies of the young people mirror yours.
Mhm.
So that could, we could see both things happen, I think.
Right. Yeah, there could definitely be. There already is. I mean, a massive onshoring of jobs and production capabilities, and because we offshored it all in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I mean,
Right.
that was a huge policy move for the U.S. to offshore a massive amount, and that kind of brought this um, uh, kind of distrust with the government because people who are in manufacturing said, "Well, why would you take all of our jobs offshore?" And again, it's kind of a liberal policy. It's an understanding that we're trying to better the world by sending the jobs across seas, and I think that was at least from the outside perspective what they were traditionally trying to do. They wanted to bring China into a. They thought if we brought all the production capabilities into China, that they would democratize because the general thinking was a productive society democratizes. And we found out over 20 years that that's not necessarily the case. Democracy doesn't necessarily come from a boom in your economy.
Well, if they maintain the boom, yes, but uh, Xi Jinping um, is now facing economic collapse. And I'm not kidding, economic collapse. And so where's it all going to go? Where's the manufacturing going to go? It's going to come here. It's coming back.
Hmm.
Do you know how the Chinese did it? They, in, I think it was 1979, 1980, they came up with the one child only policy. And what they did is they told couples, you can only have one child. So what did the couples do? They had a child, they gave it to the grandparents, and they went into the city and they worked for uh, 40 cents an hour. And they made stuff. It was much, much cheaper to make everything in China, which is what boosted China. Now, uh, that the labor rate has gone up dramatically, and they don't have enough people because they prevented them from being born.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting time.
It is going to be interesting, and I still think that technology definitely plays a role in this because as you need less technology or and less people to have the same or even more output, that's going to have such a dramatic shift in what happens as a population. And you know, uh, I I tend to believe that the population is probably going to start decreasing as again more countries continue to come into prosperity, continue to come into having the middle class, and we've seen it in every advanced economic society on the planet. The birth rates start to come down. They start to get a little bit top heavy, and then again, we'll see what happens when a large majority of that hemisphere, the Western hemisphere or Eastern hemisphere, goes through that same thing all at the same time, as the other side of the world starts to kind of pick up the slack. And again, with technology, I don't know, it doesn't seem like we're going to need as much human manpower, as much human labor to maintain the level of existence that we're familiar with.
Yeah, you can make an argument to that end. You really could. But I think we're once again going to become a manufacturing um, continent, and it's going to be better.
Hmm.
We'll make more. We will supply the rest of the world with stuff,
Like we
tons of.
used to.
Yeah, like we used to.
like the baby boomers did, right?
Yeah, well, the real force was the GI generation born 1905 to 1924, the baby boomers' parents.
Hmm.
And the whole idea that, manufacturing became, on a grand scale. Well, we're going to see it. We're going to see technology affect manufacturing and make your head spin. And it's very exciting to think about that. You know what else is going to change significantly? Healthcare. How do I know that? Baby boomers have $100 trillion in net worth, and it's most of it's in real estate, but they have it. Baby boomers are currently 59 to 78 years old. And baby boomers do not have dying on their punch list. It's not something they're looking forward to. So they're not resigning to that. So they are throwing money at healthcare. And if you want to see money thrown at healthcare, come on down to Florida and take a look at what's available. I mean, you could walk to, uh, it had surgery done. I mean, that's how there is so much down here, and boomers are uh, making use of that. And the boomers aren't really here yet.
Hmm.
The silent generation, for the most part, is here. I had spots in my. I don't know if you ever have floaters in your eyes,
Yeah.
like things, and they bothered me like crazy. So I asked around the condominium, because we're all giving each other health advice. That's what we talk about.
Right.
And, uh, they said, they said, no, you're not going to go to an ophthalmologist, or you're not going to go to any ordinary place to have that fixed. You've got to go to a retina center. And there are several down here. So I went to the retina center and I sat down with the ophthalmologist, and he looked in my eyes, and I said, floaters, right? And he said, yeah. I said, they'll go away. Don't worry about it. He said, but you have a detached retina. I said, a detached retina on my left eye. And he said, yeah. And he said, you need surgery and you need it now.
Hmm.
And I said, I'm envisioning, because what that involved, it used to involve, was like cutting surgery, and you had to lay on your stomach for a couple of weeks. Yeah, sure. And I said, oh man, really? Surgery? And he said, yeah, but we can do it right now. And I said, what do you mean? He said, and he pulls out this laser gun. He sticks it in my eye, and he goes, boom, 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 boom. And he says, you're done. I said, you're kidding. And he said, no, come back in a couple months, and I just want to see it, how it took. And I went back in a couple months, and it was fixed.
Hmm.
You're going to see healthcare, and healthcare will improve longevity, and longevity improves population. But what's going to happen is we're going to have a huge crop of wealthy baby boomers that are going to live into their 90s.
Yeah.
An exciting time.
It is. It'll
Yeah.
be a whole shift in understanding as far as demographics go, and I think the healthcare system is also ripe for a little bit of shifting into maybe more holistic approaches to the healthcare system as well. Because with a detached retina, like it's amazing to see what Western medicine is able to do. But from a long-term sickness perspective, I mean, Eastern medicine, the holistic approach to medicine does seem to have a much higher effect rate, much better way. Instead of treating the symptoms, you're actually treating the causes of those symptoms. And I think for our generation, at least in America, there already is this massive resurgence of holistic approaches to medicine, and it'll be interesting to see where that takes uh, my generation and the Gen Zers, and what that does for healthcare. Because right now, there's definitely a belief from baby boomers and Gen X that the only way to heal yourself is going to the doctor, getting medicine, getting some type of procedure done, and that's how you fix and heal the human body. Where there's a lot more study, and this is like the new science that's coming out over the last 20 years, which is kind of proving that there's an energetic field behind the human body, and when you heal that energetic field, you actually heal the human body way more than you do with medicines, traditional medicines, surgeries, and that kind of likes. So that'll be an interesting theme that's going to start cropping up here in the more well-known communities, or basically in the uh, regular media, is this idea and this use of what I'm calling holistic approaches to medicine.
Yes, it's like eating well and exercising.
Right,
Yeah, what could be bad? Yeah, the body is complex, isn't it? And there's a lot more to it than what we think.
for sure.
And we've been filling it with pharmaceuticals. And one,
Pharmaceuticals and chemicals
oh,
and
please,
everything that is bad for the human body. And again, I try not to get I try not to get into the blame game. I think a lot of those companies that were doing that stuff were doing it because there was this massive population boom, and they were trying to keep up, and they're trying to figure out how to feed everybody. But now that the science is out, like, we need to transition away from those chemicals, transition away from how we've done things for the last 30 or 40 years, and move into um, safer and better ways for us to feed this population. And they're coming around. The technology's coming around.
it
There's
certainly is.
growing technologies that exist now that have never been around before. I think the approach of just really moving back towards farming the way that it used to be, not in like the 1800s, but in 1950s, 1940s. I mean, that we have the technology. It doesn't require a third of the population to feed the rest of the population. It requires 1 to 2% are the numbers that I've seen, especially with the available technologies. And that assumes that we're able to energize all of these technologies as well, and we don't face some type of energy crisis that could start to show up as prices start to raise, as the ubiquity of oil and other carbon based energy systems, we go through and use up these carbon based systems. So that'll be another trend to really keep an eye on.
Big time. What do you think about electric cars and the mandate to be all electric in like 10 years?
Well, I don't think it solves the problem. It just moves the crisis from one non-renewable resource to another non-renewable resource. And there are capabilities for us to renew energy through solar, through wind, through those, but it doesn't appear to be enough. I mean, most of the evidence shows that it's not enough for us to power all the technology that we currently are operating and assuming as we move into the future. There's going to be an even more need for energy. So it doesn't seem like it solves the problem. It's just moving it to a new and even more
Yeah,
scarce resource, which is all of the minerals that it goes into creating these photovoltaic storage units. And yeah, again, like, if we're going to get it from the sun, all of the materials that it takes to get into that, how is there enough of those materials? And I'm sure there's the tech CEO or tech owner who's like, well, yeah, we just need one comment and we can get it all in one comment. And it's like, okay, well, that doesn't seem like a viable option at this
yeah.
point in the current existence of humanity. So from my perspective, there are energies, these what are they called? Mini nuclear facilities. So basically, they're encapsulated. They build them in a plant. They can be shipped anywhere across the world. You ship them with an 18-wheeler basically, and they can be placed and set up. And it's a 20-year runtime. There's almost no maintenance involved, and they're able to power. You need one per 2 or 3 square miles will power that entire city area for 20 years. And that seems to be like a very good interim solution. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with like 0 point energy or what they're doing. There's a company in France, the International Space Federation, that is claiming at this point, at least, that they've figured out 0 point energy, which is essentially free energy. This is the energy that Nikola Tesla was kind of working on before he got he wasn't allowed to work on it anymore. And this is not only is it's energy drawn from basically the fabric of reality, but it's also um, able to be dispersed without using cables. It's you can basically disperse it through radio frequency waves, and that would be I think a long-term solution that seems like a viable option for me. Again, I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly where we are with
No,
that,
but it
but they're
sounds cool.
certainly they are claiming that they have figured this out, and they have a basically a bond that they're putting out for investors, and they want to create this worldwide bond where nobody owns the technology. It just is, it's free for humanity to use. So that'll be an interesting thing that I think we'll start to see a little bit more awareness of in the coming years. Again, there's an idea that um those who benefit from fossil fuels and then now from green energy are going to not be interested in allowing this technology to come out. Again, this is all speculative, but it's like you said, it is a very interesting time to be alive.
Yeah. Can we shift gears?
Yeah.
Because I got to run something by you that is a pet issue of mine. Do you know, um, there are roughly, I'm going to say roughly, a good guess, 120 million people between the ages of 25 and 55 in the United States. Okay. Roughly. Take the women out. So that leaves us with 60 million men. What percentage of those men are marginally employed or not employed because they are felons, had done at least a year in jail? What percentage of the 60 million?
Shoot. My guess would be under 1%.
It's a third.
1/3.
Yeah, it's 20 million.
Shoot.
Now, and it even gets, it's a little trickier than that. Of the 20 million, there are about over 100 million people who have police records. And we're not talking police records. We're talking felons, people that have been arrested and done time. Of the 20 million of that 30 million, what percentage of them are African Americans?
40?
It's half.
Half.
Yeah, it's 10 million. How many African American men are there in that age category, 25 to 54 years old? It's all of them.
Hmm.
We have literally, Joe, we've wiped out a culture, and it's the African American culture. Do you watch football or basketball?
I used to. I haven't so much in the last couple of years.
Yeah, but I don't. I really don't either. If you're watching football or basketball, you're watching felons.
Hmm.
Those are felons. They can't work because they're not bondable. The insurance companies can't. They can't even drive a truck, because if they drive a truck and they've got some kind of narcotics in their past, and they get into an accident, the judgment will be monstrous. So they can't drive a truck. We have a problem. There are 2 million men in jail right now. And what we have is recidivism. They just spin in and out. They just keep on going in and out.
Right.
And it's affected our labor force to the point where 1/3 of the men that should be working in that prime age category are not. And it's because they're felons. And we need to fix that. And I don't know why we don't. I really don't.
Right. I mean, it should be a pretty simple fix, right? I mean, you make a pathway for them to be able to expunge their record, and
Precisely.
it seems pretty simple, but it is expensive. I've gone through the expungement process, and it was $2,000, and for somebody who's not working, $2,000 is
Oh, they're not going to do it. Yeah.
It's not a possible thing. So
No, what shows up is that of the 20 million men, what do they do to occupy their time? They watch TV.
mhm.
It's a TV issue. Okay, shifting gears just a little bit more. Law school. Law school is about 70-30 women. College is about 60-40 women. What's going on? Well, and this is just practical numbers. Um, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Boomer men held the technical jobs. They were the electricians, they were the plumbers, they were the auto technicians, they were heating, ventilation, air conditioning technicians, and they're leaving work. Your generation, men, not the women, men, uh, are opting not to go to college, and they're taking those businesses from the baby boomers. So there's just enough of a chunk to make the difference. So what you're going to see more and more and more in leadership positions, because the glass ceiling is shattering, is women in leadership.
Yeah.
And I, you know what? I get cheers from the women in my crowd, and they, I say, yeah, I would you know, hold your applause, because wait till you get into this, because it's not as simple as it seems. It's going to be a little bit harder, but we'll see. It's a
Yeah. I think it's a great thing. I think having a little bit more of a heart-led leadership in
right.
business is probably not a bad thing. And as long as they don't get sucked into the masculine culture of business and become, females with a masculine energy, like I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. I think it's actually going to be beneficial for
I'll-
society to have all these businesses that are looking out for the good, the well-being of not only just their employees, but the all of the other um, people that are involved in that business. So their customers, the shareholders as well. From every level, each one of those are gonna benefit from a more feminine touch to management in at least a business setting, and if not, hopefully across the entirety of the society.
I think you nailed it. I really do, because that's exactly what I believe is going to happen. It is changing us. It is changing us in a way that is, and forgive the expression, but kinder, gentler.
Hmm.
And I'll take it. Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take.
I want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where it's dog eat dog, and
Well,
the masculine aspect of business is primarily that. So I think this is any other words of wisdom, anything that else you want to share as far as little nuggets for us?
don't get bummed out by the way we're fighting right now, because it's a very natural thing. And I'll tell you why. And when I was growing up, it was the hippies and the establishment. I mentioned hippies earlier. What was that? That was the GI generation and the baby boomers were at complete odds. Why was there no balance? Why did we have Kent State? Why did we have why was there this vicious entanglement? And it was because the generation in the middle, which should have been the moderates, was tiny. And that was called the silent generation, the parents of Generation X. Thanksgiving dinner. You have Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody's had Thanksgiving dinner. At Thanksgiving dinner, you have the grandparents, the parents, uh, middle-aged people, and you have young people. Take the people in the middle out and tell them to go have Thanksgiving dinner someplace else, and bring up politics, bring up Trump, bring up whatever, January 6th in Thanksgiving, and you will have a fight. And that's what we're having right now. And it's because we have a hole in our that should be moderate strength. And it's not moderate strength because it just isn't there, period. They weren't
Right.
born. And they should be deliberating between your generations and Z and the baby boomers, who are now the extreme right wingers. There's no middle ground. But you know what's going to fix it? Your generations, because the generation right behind
Yeah,
you is just a little smaller than you. So you're going to have a nice balance. with the age. So that's my parting comment.
Beautiful. And it's already happening. There is a huge movement in people around my age into going back to the middle, to getting out of this two-party system, to really trying to find the balance between the left and the right, and not go into it. And there's a lot of movement behind RFK Jr. and see what he can do. I think last week or 2 weeks ago he declared independence, so he's not running as a Democrat against Biden. I don't think the RN or the DNC would have allowed that anyway. I cannot understand for the life of me why the DNC thinks running Biden is going to be any option whatsoever, but I'm fortunately not a part of that system. So yeah, it's going to be, it is happening exactly as the demographics seem to be portraying it. My generation is certainly moving back into the middle, is trying to find the middle ground between the far left and the far right. And
I wish
we're also coming in. Yeah, we're trying. We're kind of figuring out our spirituality. That's like a huge step that's going on as well.
You're right.
Very, very far removed from the traditional religions. I think many of us are, but
I have
spirituality nonetheless.
I've got a 28-year-old daughter and a 31-year-old daughter, and they're finding their own way. They are finding their own way. So I know exactly what you're saying. It is Bob Dylan. The times they are a changing, and there's, and you don't need a weatherman tell you which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Ken, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad I had you on. I'm looking forward to my listeners hearing this conversation. And again, it's a lot more practical than I think most of them are used to, but it's a beautiful conversation, and I'm excited to share it with them. So I appreciate you coming on. I've got your socials. I've got your website. If anybody wants to work with Ken, if anybody's got a business and they want to know about demographics and how that plays into the future of their business.
Very cool. This has been good for me too. It really has. And I am so delighted that you're a notch above.
Oh, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that.
Yes, you are. This is, you're a smart guy.
I'm trying to get the word out. I'm trying to get it out and make an impact on society. So
you got it, man. Make an impact. Make a difference.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care.
Thank you again for listening to Changing the Channel with Joe Garner. If you enjoyed the show, please follow the podcast, hit the bell to know when a new show comes out, share with a friend, and rate us on whatever platform you're tuning in from. It helps get these messages out to more people to create the collective shift in reality we are here to experience. Make sure you interact with the Q&A and poll sections of the show so I can continue to provide content you enjoy. Finally, check out my website in the show notes to become a VIP of Changing the Channel and join the shift that is happening.